From a young age, our daughter felt stirred to missionary work, especially in Africa. So Tony and I began providing her books to read about women the Lord used in mighty ways. Admittedly, some of these women held views different from our own secondary doctrine, and many of them lived in eras of antiquity we find hard to understand. But still, their love for Christ and devotion to His Word can encourage us as women serving the Lord. One of our family favorites is Perpetua, a 22-year-old who refused to renounce her faith and was executed. In fact, she was nursing her newborn baby when they imprisoned her, and her father begged her to recant, but she refused and was tied up to be gored by bulls while the crowds cheered. Another early woman of the faith is often called St. Paula because she was a friend of Jerome and encouraged him to translate the Bible from Hebrew and Greek into Latin, a translation that was used for more than 1,500 years. What most people don't know is that Paula had been a very wealthy Roman citizen, but after her husband's death, she walked away from her wealth in order to help Jerome translate. Still another early woman of faith was Augustine's mother, Monica, who prayed and prayed for her son's salvation and was so committed to Christ that nearing 60 years old, she traveled 1,000 miles to see her son and beg his conversion. Joyfully, he did accept Christ, and she died only 3 years later. That son, Augustine, became one of the greatest theologians in history. As the Reformation loomed, Marie Dantier was born in Belgium to a wealthy family, and though her family prepared her to be a nun, she turned Protestant and fled to Strasbourg, where she married a converted priest, and they witnessed against the Catholic Church. To this day, Marie is the only woman named in the Reformation Wall in Geneva. And likely the most famous woman of the Reformation was Katharina von Bore. We know her as Kate Luther, who was the nun who wrote to Luther for help after she'd converted from Catholicism, and ultimately became his wife, running the home, encouraging her busy husband, and helping him formulate world-changing ideas. As Protestant Christianity crossed the globe, Fanny Crosby was born, now known as the Queen of the Gospel Songwriters. Fanny wrote over 9,000 hymns, all while being blind after a fake doctor abused her at 6 weeks old. But due to the blindness, Fanny memorized the Pentateuch, the Gospels, Proverbs, Song of Songs, and Psalms. And to this very day, we sing Fanny's songs, including Blessed Assurance and Safe in the Arms of Jesus. And one of Christianity's most famous missionaries is Amy Carmichael, who was converted at 14 and left for India in 1895, where she founded an orphanage caring for over 1,000 children whose parents had dedicated them to the gods and Hindu slavery. And even after being paralyzed, she published 16 books before dying in 1951. And one of Tony's heroes is Corrie ten Boom. Born in Holland, Corrie watched the Nazis take over her country, hurting the Jews, so she and her father stepped in to help. But they were caught and ultimately sent to a concentration camp where Corrie's father and sister died. Amazingly, Corrie walked free the day before her fellow prisoners were killed, and she traveled the world 35 years speaking on the power of the cross. And last but not least, one of my heroes is Elizabeth Elliot, who served alongside her husband Jim in the jungles of Ecuador until the sad day he was speared in the back by the Indians. Yet remarkably, Elizabeth continued on her mission, bringing the gospel to the very tribe who murdered her husband, ultimately influencing a generation of Christian missionaries to give what they cannot keep, to gain what they cannot lose. We could go on and on. Sarah Edwards, Susanna Wesley, Harriet Tubman, Gladys Aylward, Johnny Erickson Tata, and even to this day, Katie Davis in Uganda. But I digress. So in the end, dear sisters, know we have a beautiful heritage of faith, and may we continue it forward.